state is a fiercely competitive and ruthless society.
And now, After Hours with Rixx Javix.
Welcome to After Hours with Rixx Javix. I'm your host, Rixx Javix, coming to you from the darkest reaches of low-security space, live from the Stay Frosty Lounge. Grab a cold drink, light a cigar, and let's talk.
Alright, well, I'm Elise Randolph. I have played Eve for the better part of a decade. I'm a member of Pandemic Legion, sometimes leader, sometimes FC, depending on who needs to shout at me. I'm a former member of the CSM for CSM 6 and 7, and I've done Alliance Tournament commentary as well, so you might have heard me when you watched Eve's Alliance tournaments.
You've also flown in the tournament too, correct?
Yes, I have flown in the tournament. I've got 4 gold medals. So
nice. Nice.
Quite happy about that.
Right.
It's one of my favorite things to do in all of Eve is tournament time. It's just... It just changes Eve so much, and it's so much fun.
Yeah,
and I also do Eve NT as well, which is competitive Eve sports in sort of a different way from the Alliance tournament, but still.
It's still competitive, and I find it to be much more casual in a good way. You know.
Yeah. It's much less daunting.
The stakes are not quite as high. For example, we were in the majors in the fall, and I didn't. We were in the majors in the spring too, but I didn't play as much in the spring because I'd started a new job. So, basically the guys just ran with it. But everybody had a blast. Those were 2 great rounds of tournament. So. I think it feels a good niche in the community to have those.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And BRJ kind of came up with the idea of having preset rules, and we figured out preset chips, and we're like, how can we make this work without people throwing a fit? Because a lot of people who do the competitive parts of esports, what they like is coming up with their own fits and being able to decide that way. But
it's such a huge part of it.
System. Yeah. Came up with a pretty good system that adds that same level of complexity, but it evens out the playing field, and it makes it so you don't have to, spend your entire week just practicing just for an event. You can just kind of have a little bit more fun.
Yeah, you would think. I think at the beginning we all sort of felt that taking away the fitting part would be kind of a detriment in a way. But I think what it did was allow you to relax a little bit and focus on the piloting and the skills and working together as a team a little bit more than the minutia of trying to figure out the absolute perfect way to fit a ship. So it was kind of nice. And then the great part about it too, as I found, which I thought was kind of funny, is if you do screw up, you can always blame the fit, right? Because it wasn't yours, right? So it kind of a built-in. It's kind of a built-in excuse. So that's kind of nice. Are you? We're still sitting around waiting for AT rules to roll out, so none of us really know what's going on with that. But are you going to be involved this year? On which side of the fence are you going to be on?
I'm still not sure. For the so the Alliance tournament this year, they're expanding it from 3 weekends to 4 weekends.
Right.
To lengthen that a little bit.
Right.
And for the first 2 weekends rather, Event is going to be doing all of the coverage in terms of filming, casting,
pretty much running the whole thing. Yeah.
So we're really excited about that. So I'll be involved in some capacity for the UNT side.
Okay.
And when it comes to running the actual, or not running, but participating in it, I will probably be on the practice squad for the PLAT team and be running one of the practice squads there.
Right.
I'm not sure if I'll be flying.
Okay.
But who knows? Maybe.
Yeah. You never know.
Maybe I will. I do love it. It's definitely my favorite thing. But it's so much time to get to this part where you feel like you're good enough to actually fly.
Yeah.
When you whelp a fleet in EVE Online, you feel a little bit bad, right?
Right.
But if you're the one that loses in the Alliance tournament match that people put 40 hours a week in preparing for 8 to 10 weeks, you feel like so bad.
There's so much pressure.
Yeah, it is so much pressure to perform.
I can only imagine that, for PL, flying for PL, because you guys have such a storied history with the tournament. For us, last year we finished in the top 16, but the year before we lost the first 2 matches. But so we did a lot better last year, and we're looking to do a lot better this year. But it was a lot of pressure for us, no doubt. But it's still, kind of, we in a way have a built-in excuse too, because it's only our second year, right? So you can always say that, it was our second year, we did really well. But yeah, I have yet to experience, and I hope I never do, the feeling of letting down the entire team. The closest I came was in, what was that tournament that we had before even T came around? It was the Neo, right? Or
Neo was
excuse me.
There was a syndicate competitive league,
right? That was
operated by players,
right?
Then there was the New Eden Open, which is operated by CCP,
right? So we had a tournament. We had a match in that, which I still watch it every once in a while, just to keep myself humble. But I was flying a Macarial, and we actually did an entire pirate fleet, and which was kind of fun. And we had Cinnaballs and Macarials and, Yada and Daredevils. And it was a good match. We won. We actually did win the match, but I lost the Macarial like in the last couple of second or minute of the fight, because, when you're sitting in the hangar and you've got everything's ready to go, and and then you have the decision to make, like, how many cap booster charges as opposed to ammunition do I take? And if I'd have had one more cap booster, I would have lived, and I didn't. So that was I always think of that.
My very first time flying with the Alliance Tournament with PL was Alliance Tournament 6, and I had put in so much practice because I was a college student at the time, and it was done in summer.
Right.
So I just had a bunch of free time. So I just nerded out and was like, I'm going to be like the best person to fly there. And I didn't actually have really good skills to fly the ship that I was supposed to be flying. And I was supposed to be flying a Rook, and I had good jamming skills, but I didn't have good enough armor skills. I couldn't Tech 2 enams.
Right.
And so I was like, I didn't want to say anything, so I got past the ship and was like, you know what, I'm gonna buy my own best named enam. I'm gonna take the Tech 2 one off, put mine on, and just not say anything, just so I could fly in this tournament.
Right.
And we ended up winning, and it was super fortunate that I didn't die there.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you lose the ship? Right?
A bad fit or wrong fit.
Kill mail would have been for everywhere.
I probably would have been kicked out of the instant.
That's funny. Yeah, because, no matter what we do to our ships, those kill mails last forever,
Yeah.
They never go away. I've had ship losses where I've tried really hard for the next few days to bury it as fast as possible. Just get it down the kill board so nobody ever sees it, right? So it's always kind of fun, though. But yeah, we're looking forward to it. We've been practicing for probably a good month now already. So I guess you guys are probably busy on that. Do you get involved a lot with the theory crafting, or you just kind of leave that to others, or is that something you're interested in?
Is for the practice squad for PL, I do a lot of the theory crafting, and I do a lot of running the actual teams and the organization behind it.
Right.
I didn't last year at all, but the year before and all previous years I have, and it's always really fun to do. You become, at least for PL, you become this one giant dysfunctional family.
Right.
It's like Christmas dinner with your extended family, just extended over 6 weeks or 8 weeks.
Right.
And you become really good friends with people. You kind of start to hate them a little bit.
Right.
You're I love them, but I still kind of hate them a little bit. You have that weird...
Yeah. Love-hate relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys keep dinging me at all hours. Please stop doing that. Especially now with, you carry your phone or whatever around, and everything, the Discords and the Slacks and all those things are dinging at you all the time. It gets kind of annoying after a while, but
100%.
Yeah, it's part of the charm.
Crafting is always my favorite part of the Alliance Tournament, because that's sort of PL's strength generally. Historically, our strength has been the ships that we take, not necessarily our piloting.
Right.
Obviously you have to be good pilots, but we're never the best pilots. I remember 2 years ago, CCB Larrikin pulled some stats from the average APM of the pilots, and you had like Hydra and Camel at the top.
Right.
And then you had some good teams in the middle. And then you had like PL, like somehow we're like 30 out of 32 in terms of that. So I think it's because we were flying Tinkers most of the time. But
right.
But still, like that, we usually do the sort of outsmarting thing. The last 2 years, we've been trying to outpilot people, and I think we actually have been really well.
Right.
But still, the bread and butter is always coming up with a really good setup, which is my favorite part.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the faction plays into this one, and, we've been told there might be some, slightly different things going on, so that should be interesting.
Yeah, I like the little hitches they do on the rules. Mm-hmm. Like last year they had the Blood Raiders thing.
Right.
And this year it's going to be Serpentis, so I'm hoping they change the rules enough, but not super drastically. I want change.
Yeah, absolutely. I think most of the time, unlike the game itself, most of the time the changes to the AT have been pretty good. I think make it more competitive.
Managed to cut out the disgustingly overpowered parts.
Right.
And they kind of they keep it fresh.
Yeah.
And I know they can just do that's the best part about the Alliance tournament. They can do such a small change, like they can reduce bombers from 4 points to 3 points.
Right.
And then bombers are in the meta.
Right. Right. It has such a huge impact. Yeah, the slightest thing, changes everybody's little whiteboards, and changes the way you approach it. So, we're making a lot of assumptions right now, but we'll see. I'm very excited about it. It's, early on in my career, I kind of poo-pooed it a little bit, and that is probably just coming from, not being in an alliance long enough or having an alliance live long enough. A lot of the alliances I was in died suddenly before they were able to get into the alliance tournament, so that may have had something to do with it too. But once you start getting into it, the bug gets into you, and you kind of look forward. I'm really looking forward to it again. So
when they rescaled the prizes, I think it's become a lot more fun for more players.
That's a good point too. Yeah.
Because in the beginning, or for the first, I guess, 11 years of the Alliance.
Yeah, give or take 10. Yeah.
First 1 or 2, and then you get all the prizes.
Right.
And it was fun for people like PL and Hydra and Ronin and Huns because they were always felt like the same
group.
Teams were competing for the top 2 spots.
Right.
And if you didn't get there, then it was all for nothing.
Right.
Now then, when it's rescaled, it feels like even if you just get into the top 8 or something, you still get or top 6.
Well, don't you think? Yeah. Don't you think too that a lot of this is about the introduction of skill injectors for one thing. So you can level up some of your pilots that are a little bit lower, because I know we do it. We look at everybody's skill train and see where their holes are, so that we can skill inject those up, and then the proliferation of cash. I mean, really, because in the day you couldn't really spend cash as easily, to buy the materials you needed and everything. So a lot of that's, and it's all for the good because it's opened the field up to even smaller teams having a viable chance, as long as they practice well and they work hard to make a nice run at it.
Yeah, that too. I think that plays a role as well. I mean, it's something that coming from PL, I'm not really used to considering because I don't know, we're very lucky. We get very good pilots and we don't have to worry about skill.
True, that's true.
I can pull from a list of people who have electronic attack frigates trained to 5 for years. It's completely ridiculous to have.
Right.
There's no real reason to have it, but they have it anyway. So I'm really spoiled in that regard.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's probably something that's a lot easier for you guys than for most of us. Just the pool of available talent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that helps. But, so, yeah, I gotta tell you, I actually was in PL I had applied and was accepted, and then I turned it down. And this was probably, I don't even know, 2011 maybe, somewhere in there. I'm not quite remembering exactly when. But what had happened was I had decided to join, and I can't remember who I was talking to at the time, but I actually can't even remember which corporation it was. But I had just left a war, and there was another one starting up, and so I decided to go back to the old corporation that I had left to go fight in the war again. So that was the half moment that I was almost in PL. So those are the kinds of things you think back on, and you're like, because there was a day like that with Nor. I almost remember Nor. I almost joined Nor mercenary group once, and there's a few others of those. You think, what if I had done that? How different the path would have been. But are there any moments like that, or have you? I mean, how long have you been with Pandemic Legion? Is it pretty much the whole time?
I've basically been with PL for... Okay, so my EVE history is I joined EVE because a friend of mine was playing, and as soon as I started, that friend basically stopped.
Right.
And I was like, okay, whatever. So I picked it up, I dropped it, I picked it up again, and I found a group called Slacker Industries. They were recruiting. And they were recruiting newer players, and I was like, yeah, this sounds fun. These guys seem like good guys, so I joined the...
They seem pretty chill.
Right. Yeah, I joined their training corp called Burning Orphans, and the idea behind it was we're just going to get a bunch of new players, shove them in E-warships,
and
we'll just give them free Falcons and Blackbirds, and then we'll just go fight.
Yeah.
And I felt great doing that. I was like, oh, nice, I'm involved, I'm doing stuff, and they really gave me the PvP bug at that time.
Was that done in Zero Space, or...
Yeah, it was
mostly.
In, Low Sec and Null Sec.
Okay.
They eventually moved to Fountain.
Okay.
And, they held all the moons in Fountain, and that's where I met a few people who ended up being in PL. But, I was just hanging out in the Slackers Corp, and I was like, oh, this is fun. And then one day, the CEO of the Corp is like, oh, well, guys, I'm not going to be able to play too much. I'm entering my first year of college, so I'm not going to really bring my computer and stuff with me to play EVE because it's too much of a time sink.
Right.
I was like, wait, how old are you? I'm taking orders from what now? Like, I'm taking orders from a 17-year-old? Oh my goodness. So that group ended up disbanding, just going into stasis, just because the leadership of like one or two guys was like, oh, I'm going to college.
Right.
Like, okay, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And so then I kind of derped around by myself in Null Sec for a little while. We did Faction Warfare. That was the summer that Faction Warfare came out.
Right.
Riding along, loving it, getting all the kills that I could in my little broken OP frigate of the day.
Right.
And one of the people that were allies with Slackers was a group called the Illuminati, they were formerly in Tribe, but they were now in PL.
Sure. And
so I tried to join them, and at the time it was run by Viper Shizzle and XX Angel XX. Kind of, if you played EVE, 5 or 6 years ago, you'd probably remember those names.
Oh yeah,
big names. And so I applied and got rejected.
Wow.
I was like, shit. And I had like kind of vouchers, like I kind of knew Viper. But he was like, this guy, we don't know who he is. He's not good. So I joined their allies in, it was Sons of Tangra.
Sons of Tangra, yeah. Wow.
Run by a Bulgarian group called the Bulgarian Mafia. They lived in Fountain Core, so I was familiar with them.
Right.
And they were blue to PL at the time. And so we flew together on fleets. And the more fleets I flew on, finally the PL, like, fine, you can join, whatever, you can join. So I joined the Illuminati, which, the ticker is oh shit, which is one of my favorite tickers. So I was in PL from then. I was just a little pleb. I didn't really do anything. I did recon stuff. I did some industry stuff, like I did jump freighters and then field passes. Then eventually my corp got kicked out of PL and joined Cry Havoc. And I was
Wow.
PL, I'm gonna stick with my corp with my friends.
Right.
So I did. We went into Cry Havoc, and the leader of Cry Havoc, Mr. Suffering, great guy.
Yeah.
He was incredibly motivated, really good at killing super caps. He was essentially it was kind of like a mix between Black Legion of their heyday and Pandemic Legion.
Right.
But in a much smaller footprint.
Right.
So really liked them, and we joined, and then a month later, Mr. Suffering was like, I'm not going to play it anymore. I'm going to spend more time with my family.
Yeah, it happens a lot.
Yeah, and so then the idea came up with, well, we could rejoin PL, and we'd be rejoining PL with basically the core of Cry Havoc as well in our corp. So it looked a little bit more appealing. And so that's what we ended up doing. But one of the stipulations was Viper Shizzle, which was the reason that my corp got kicked out, and the CEO could no longer be CEO. So they put me as CEO to get their foot in the door to PL. And that's how I became the CEO of Corbin Piano.
just by default, really. You were standing close to it.
I started FCing while we were in Cohatic, just out of pure frustration because there was so much stuff to shoot.
Right.
People didn't want to do it, so I was like, fine, I'll FC.
Yeah, I mean that's essentially that's how I started FCing back in the day, was because nobody else would do it. So I was just bored, and I liked running fleets, and mostly down in Providence, south, and Faith Abilis down that way. But because nobody else would do it, so I'm like, well, then I'll do it. So
yeah, I mean that's basically how it works.
It is really.
You just get stuck doing it, and then I got the itch, and I was like, this is the best thing ever. And I spent more and more time FCing. I kind of just looked after, I got a lot of inspiration from Shadu, who was super active at the time.
Right.
And he sort of, he acted as my inadvertent mentor. He didn't really know he was, but he was doing it.
Right.
And then I just kept doing it, and over and over and over again. And as I got my swagger in me, they let me do more and more. And I just really loved the structure of how PL was working.
Right.
Because it wasn't like any other corp that I had been in or any other group.
Right.
It's if you do well and you prove yourself, then you can do whatever you want.
Right.
But if you just are kind of holding on to past victories but you don't do anything, then you just get thrown down.
Right. That makes sense. I mean, it's a good organization, obviously. You guys wouldn't have had the success that you've had otherwise. I mean, there's really no other way to look at it.
Yeah, I'm probably super biased, but I think it's the absolute best.
You are super biased, yeah. No,
yeah.
But still.
I think we're the best.
Yeah, okay. All right.
I've had a lot of fun in PL, and I definitely wouldn't be playing if it weren't for the group here, and then
my career is the opposite. I started out big and have just gotten smaller and smaller as time has gone on, because all those days of running 250-man fleets and sitting around on Titans and doing all those things, I did all of that before, and then as time went on, I just realized that I really wanted to focus on more of my own skills as a personal pilot, and more solo and small gang, and then this alliance sort of just happened around me by accident. So not even really by intention, but it's kind of worked out really well. So I'm in this nice little, 800 some person alliance, but it's just kind of a very comfortable, like a comfortable chair. That's how I kind of feel
really
about it.
Too.
It's kind of nice.
A lot of my time in EVE, I think it's really important, and I spoke about this a little bit at EVE Vegas last year.
Right.
I think it's supremely important to sort of change up your playstyle every once in a while. If you get stuck in the same rut, you'll just get bored of it, no matter how good you are at it.
Right.
You'll eventually get bored of it. So
yes.
A lot of times I'm roaming around Null Sec, doing stuff like that. I'm trying to come up with inventive ways to PvP and get some good fights. I mostly stick through faction warfare space. Before that, I was kind of the bane of a Null Sec. I'd fly a Drake,
right.
I'd fly a Ham Drake,
right.
and I'd have with me a Basilisk with a cloak and
nice.
2 Warp Core stabs.
Wow. Okay.
So my Drake would just sit in the belt. Some pirate would come to shoot me. I'd shoot him back. He'd escalate. I'd decloak my Basilisk.
Right.
And just tank forever because it's just absurd.
Right.
And then they'd charge at my Basilisk and I'd just warp off as their thing. And they'd just get super frustrated. And
I can imagine.
People just stopped fighting me in one of those for the longest time.
Yeah, that's funny. I love doing that. I love doing stuff like that. Just annoy the hell out of people for no reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm always trying to find out if it's inventive ways to not necessarily just pilot a Tech 1 ship better than everyone else or have better skills, but sort of just throw a wrinkle in there that maybe they wouldn't expect.
Yeah, it's not, after a while, and you said it too, is if you keep doing the same things, it gets boring, no matter how good you get at it, right? And I think we've seen that, over the years. This will be my 9th year playing EVE, so we're kind of been around the same amount of time and around the same types of people. And, I've seen it, other than I'm having a baby, I'm not going to play anymore, or I got married and I'm not going to, everybody's got lives that happen. I mean, that happens all the time. But the other thing that gets people is boredom. You just get bored and you stop logging in as often. And, after a while, they just don't log in anymore at all. So it's, one of the challenges of leadership, and I think you probably find this as well, is trying to keep the troops entertained, right? So finding things for everybody to do.
Yeah, that's a big thing, and not only that, but not resting on your laurels when you have great success, right? So if you succeed, great. Who cares? You did something great. In the moment, it's fantastic, but it doesn't help you tomorrow. So you always got to keep looking for the next big accomplishment that you can achieve.
Yeah. Speaking,
and that's something we try and do in PL quite often as well.
Right,
I think that's what keeps us fresh.
Just challenge yourselves as a group. Yeah. So speaking of which, are you guys? I saw you tweet a couple of times over the last few days about Pravi. Are you guys down in there and fighting over animation and anime?
Well, I'm not sure where the anime thing came from. I think it's a really funny gimmick.
I love it.
South, we moved after like the war in the north. We kind of moved around in the north a little bit just because it's easy to move around up there and there's lots of people there. And Test and CO2 ended up leaving, and so we shot the rest of the low hanging fruit in the north, and we were like, we'll come south. South is where everything is.
Right.
There's Test, there's CO2, there's Brave over there to the left, and then there's Providence, who've always been good at getting fights.
Yeah.
So we moved down, and we were like, we're going to move without our supers because just the stigma of having a super cap,
right,
just gives people an excuse to not fight, even if it doesn't affect anything.
Right. Well, it also sort of advertises a different kind of thing too, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we came down here. We had some Feroxes and just did some clowny stuff. Had some really good fights, and we were fighting with Test and CO2 and FCON, and they pulled out some pretty big fights for them. We did a cool thing with the Dread Bomb.
Cool.
That's one of the things that that was like our little secret project we were working on after everyone started mining in their Rorquals. They're all building supers and titans and stuff.
Right.
We're we're just going to build out 400 dreads and see what happens and stash them all over the place. And apparently it's really fun after the capital change.
That's
really
funny. Oh, awesome. Yeah, I'm thinking
so now we're sort of messing with FCON Brave, or FCON Test and CO2, and Providence is over there. Waffles came down from Kanaka.
Right.
There was some staleness in Null Sec between the little group that they came up with, or that they were working with. So they're like, oh, well, it became too one-sided, so they decided to come down to Providence as well. And I think there's a little bit of a grudge between Jintan and Reza after an article that Reza had posted, and then Jintan had just completely dismissed, and he was like, what, screw this, I'm going to come mess in your neighborhood a little bit. PL's nearby, so it'll help out numbers and even them out. And it's been fun. We had just an incredible fight yesterday where it was just a battleship slugfest.
Oh, that's awesome.
Some cap escalation, no supers that came in.
That's excellent.
It was just, I think there were 50 caps on either side, and we had 250 with NC Dot.
Wow.
We joined the wormhole, and they had about 5 something.
That's not too bad.
Organized. So it was a really good brawl.
No lag, or how's the lag?
There was a little bit of there was tie-dye kicked in for a while, but it eased up after about.
It doesn't sound too bad.
It was enjoyable. I had a good time. I got to talk shit in local a little bit just to rile people up.
Right.
Why not?
So I think the anime thing is hysterical. I think it's probably the lamest excuse for a war that I've ever heard, but I think it's pretty great.
Yeah.
What does it really matter? I think a lot of people would be surprised at some of the lame excuses that have come up for wars that just they haven't heard of, because there's always some lame excuse at the heart of every conflict, really, when it comes down to it. So, this was just one that's been made public. So,
yeah. And I don't think it's a real reason, but it might
of course not.
Motivated. I'm not gonna lie, I cringed a little bit when I saw. There was an article, I think, in PC Gamer about the anime war.
Yeah.
It's oh no.
Is this really something that needed to be?
People know I play EVE Online. Please don't let them read this.
It did cast us in a bad light for a minute or two. Yeah. Well, you can you've been around a long time, so whenever it gets quiet in EVE, it always feels like the next thing that happens is somebody invades Providence. So it's always kind of an easy target for having a little bit of fun without too much stakes involved, I guess.
Yeah, and historically, Pravi has been, they've always been willing to give up a fight. I know when Core Blood Brothers was the main FC around Providence,
sure,
he'd always give up a fight. His English would be a little bit broken.
Oh yeah,
He'd always fight. He'd always rally his troops and get people coming.
I've been in quite a lot of fleets with that guy. Yeah.
When things started looking bad, he'd just pull out to Null Sec and just keep fighting a little bit, and he'd never give up. He was tenacious.
Yeah, no, you got to give it to CVA for hanging out all these years, and maintaining. I mean, I never expected them to last as long as they have, but, they really have. So you have to give them some kudos for that, whatever you...
Yeah, I mean, part of it is because their space isn't insanely valuable.
Sure,
but
of course.
They've gotten the most value possible out of that space for the longest time.
They have.
So I know a lot of them are a little bit worried now that because of the changeover from stations to citadels, faction citadels.
Right.
They're like, oh no, it's going to be a cash grab. They're all going to dominate our stations and hold them forever.
Right.
But I don't know. I wouldn't count Pravi out on that fight.
No, and I feel kind of bad because a couple of those stations I helped to build. So that's kind of always weird when things like that start happening. But I figured, it's any major change in EVE is always greeted the same way, right? So everybody kind of freaks out, and it'll probably all work itself out, and not in the ways that we think necessarily.
Yeah, I think, like if I were to look at it, I think it'll just be fighting for another month or so. CVA will be like, oh, we can't sustain these losses. Some groups will splinter off, like the Doom and Gloom guys will all splinter off and
right.
do their own thing, and everything else will just stay fine.
Right.
And just go back to the situation normal.
So speaking of Citadel changes, and what do you think about the moon mining thing? What do you feel about that?
I'm of two minds because I really, really like the POS mechanic the way it is now. The way it was past, it was easy for a big group to dominate all the moons.
Right.
Big 3 group to dominate like 80% of the moons, which is what we had for the longest time.
Right.
Then with the change, like the jump mechanics and stuff like that, and a little bit of nerfs here and there, it wasn't really worth holding
that many.
You weren't living in that area.
Right.
So you just hold moons in a certain area, and that's how you got your income.
Right.
I just like that concept, and you could harass them if you're just sort of absentee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sort of gave us that thing that everybody always wanted, where you had to actually use the space in order to own it, that whole conflict. Because
plus, like, the mechanics of it were great. Like, if you wanted to take it down, you'd shoot it.
Right.
And if it was outside of your time zone, you have an amount of strong tests in there. If it's in your time zone, you can retime it to whatever time you want. But if you get caught off guard because you're lazy or whatever, then maybe you get put at a disadvantageous time.
Right.
And so there was lots of mind games going with the POSes and stuff like that. And I really, really loved that gameplay because you would be like, okay, well, in one day 17 hours or one day 12 hours, I'm going to be fighting so-and-so at this spot. I know where the fight's going to be. I know about what they're going to take. I know what they can generally bring. I know where they'll be coming from. It felt very much like, a proper fight that you could get hyped over and you can get people excited over, and you can be like, oh, this is exactly what I'm fighting for.
Right.
You can just see it in front of you with this big bubble.
Right.
And I'm going to be kind of sad when that goes away, but I'm keeping cautious optimism with a new mechanic because I think, EVE has been moving in that direction where the game of PvP is more fluid and less timer based.
Right.
So
yes.
Like, oh, there's a guy over here. Let's go protect so and so with this, and you get these more haphazard fights that aren't nearly as defined and one-sided.
Exactly, and they aren't as anchored, I guess. Too. There's more movement involved. I think is probably a good way to look at it too. Because before it was always about this spot, right? And this spot was going to be the thing that we had to work on for 3 days or however long it took. And now it's a little bit more spread out, I think. I don't know. A lot of this is sort of supposition too, but I think that's how it's going to work out.
And I think it's sort of going to be modeled, in my mind at least, after how oracles are right now.
Right.
Got these big whales sitting in space, and, you get this panic button on them. So you can, if you have like a 20 or 30 size gang, you can roam in, you can catch one of these oracles, and then instead of it just dying and being a huge piñata, if you panic and people can, like, from your group can respond fast enough,
right.
You could have a fight. But you have, like, time is of the essence. So you can't say, I'm not undocking until I get 20 lives or whatever. Like, I'm undocking now because otherwise the ship's going to explode.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that dynamic is really fun, and I'm really happy to see that dynamic still staying. I was really worried when Rorquals got nerfed
that they were going to take that away.
Just going to stop fighting or flying Rorquals.
Right.
And that mechanic would just be gone. But luckily, it stayed around. A lot of people are still just a little bit wary of it until you go to Delve and you see like 40 Rorquals.
Right, I've heard of that. Yeah. No, I think that's good gameplay, and I like that. I like that. A lot of times Eve just came down to, catch, and then no matter how long it took, kill, even if it took, forever. But, it's nice to have some systems in place where after the catch, there's some options for the person who's been caught, right? Yeah. Yeah, because a lot of times there's not, other than, putting some Warcore stabs in your lows or whatever, but we know that those are horrible. But the idea that even after I point you, there might be something you can do to do something to me, which is kind of cool. I like that. Even
the thing that really excites me over it is, obviously you have some groups who'll just respond by dumping like 100 capitals in there.
Right.
You will get groups that are just like, just undock whatever you're in right now and let's go.
Let's go. Right.
And that gives a lot of fun to like the small to medium size like roaming gangs out there. It gives them like a gameplay, and it gives you, if you live in a space, a sense of like, I'm protecting my territory right now. So it's good.
Yeah, no, it gives the home team an advantage, which is always good, because you should have, I think, an advantage by living somewhere and holding that and owning that space. Even if it's theoretically owning it, it's still, there should be some benefit to it.
Yeah. That balance has always been hard for CCB to find, like, the perfect, the balance for, Like, it's always been either too much risk and not enough reward, or too much reward, not enough risk. So I kind of like the way they're trying to find it now. I'm not going to lie, I will miss bosses, like profusely miss them, and sort of the gameplay that they represent, but I'm excited to see what might happen with new things.
Yeah, no, and I'm kind of excited about. I'm not an industrialist in any measure, but I am kind of interested in the whole, cutting a piece out of the moon and bringing it up to orbit, and watching that unfold is kind of cool, and breaking it into an asteroid field. Just even saying that kind of makes me happy, right? From a sci-fi perspective,
really cool.
It's kind of cool. Yeah. So
and it's funny, like you say that you're not like an industrialist or anything type like that. A lot of people, they don't view PL as anyone that does PvE type activities.
Right.
But the way the game is going, like, we have to, and so it's hilarious to say that PL needs this area to mine or rat while we move around, so we have to conquer this little constellation so we can mine.
Right.
And people are just like scratching their heads, like, "Are you sure? Are you joking me? Or is PL really mining?" Like, no, we got a little mining thing. We have to go. Sure. We have to build dread somehow.
Yeah. No, they don't just magically appear. Yeah. Even us pirates, we're out doing PvE a lot, in a wormhole space or wherever we can find a safe spot. But my guys have to make money too. Looting and everything, and holding people for ransom's not paying what it used to. So, the clone business kind of killed that for us, So now it doesn't cost anything really for a clone unless you've got, snakes in your head or crystals or whatever. But even so, that stuff's not even nearly what it used to be. So people don't, they don't really want to ransom their pods anymore. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, that's one part of the game where I was so bad at piracy. I thought pirating would be like my calling when I first started Eve, and that's what I began doing.
Right.
But I was just so bad at it because I'd be like, hold your ship for a while. You have to pay me money. And then they'd tell me like a sob story and be like, fine.
You were too soft-hearted.
Or I just go the complete opposite. Like,
right.
I just kill them and then be like, I feel bad for you. I'll contract you your loot and 50 million is to go with it.
Right.
But I didn't tell them. I just swapped the numbers in the contract. So I'd make them pay 50 million ISK for their loot.
Right.
And I'd cherry pick all the good pieces of that. So I give them 2 mil of loot and charge them 50 mil for it. And then I just felt bad.
Yeah. There even me. There's times where a lot of times I don't even look at the person I'm getting ready to attack. And so I did this the other day. There was I can't remember what ship it was, but I killed him so quickly. And I'm like, then I looked at his kill mount. I'm like, he'd been in Eve for like 4 days. So,
that happens,
I just feel so terrible. So I did. I wrote him an email. I sent him like 10 million ISK or something, to paid twice what his ship was worth. But yeah, I don't want people to quit, although it's weird because, the first time I died, it was the realization of what was going on that was what really got me involved in Eve in the first place. Because it was holy crap. There's these are people flying spaceships that are killing me, and that was an interesting idea that I thought was kind of cool, and it still sticks with me even to this day. That this is all. It's not. Growing up playing console games, it's always you again for the most part. You against the AI, and that's a challenging thing. But that's one of the most intriguing things to me about Eve is all of us are sitting behind these screens, trying as hard as we all can to be as good as we can possibly be and trying to defeat each other, which is kind of cool,
My favorite, kind of time zone of Eve is when, it was kind of hard to afford a certain ship. I remember I'd fly a polycarp crow with an A-type micro-warp drive because it was just ridiculous and completely overpowered. It was objectively broken. Right. It took me hours and hours and hours to get the resources to be able to afford it. I couldn't just snap my fingers and buy one without caring. Yep. So when I lost it, it was I was mad about it and I was tore up about it because it just represented so much time
and effort
that I sunk into it.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that kept me in Eve in the early days, just knowing that I could feel that and I could make someone else feel that too.
Yeah, that you not only did you feel the loss, but that you could make other people feel that loss because the ships they were flying or whatever they were doing were also important to them, and there was some value attached to everything, and how much time and effort it took to get to not just to be able to afford it, but also to train the skills and to to give some thought and planning to which skills you were going to train. And in a way, I kind of miss those days because, there's so many shortcuts now that I'm starting to sound like a bitter vet when I say it, but it's not about being a bitter vet. It's just, that's just the way things were when we were playing or in our early years. And it just, I guess you get a little nostalgic for it after a decade of doing it.
Yeah. Every once in a while I make a new character just to see what life is like, and I know the last few years when I've made them, I try to make them every year. I just play a new character for three or 4 months. Right. And this year I did it, and I remember in the first week or so of playing, I was able to get to a net worth of 400 million ISK. I was making a ridiculous amount of money just by hanging around and doing a lot of salvaging and just following fleets around and cherry picking loot and stuff like that. So once you have the knowledge of what to do in Eve, money can come so freely. And then I joined a wormhole group, and then just cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. Because after 2 months, I was paying for my sub with Flex and having whatever I want.
Right. I mean, I don't know about you, but those moments when you hit your first million, your first 10, your first 100, those are moments that I still can clearly remember what I was doing at the time those happened, and where I was, because they were such big deals back in the, that first million ISK or that first 10 million was a big deal.
Yeah. I remember I recently told a story about my very first time in Eve, the time when I played Eve that it made me put it down and not play it again for a few months because I was like, oh, this game's awful. I had just started. Someone had given me a mining frigate to mine in. It was an Imicus with a Tech 1 mining laser. Oh, God. So I went out and I mined and I mined and I mined. And I mined for what felt like hours. And I eventually got enough Velspar and I sold it. I had 100,000 ISK or something, which seemed like a lot. Right. And I was looking through the ships that I could buy. And I was like, oh, this Tristan, it's got a cool name. It's called the Little Fat Man. I like this. And then I saw a shuttle, which for 10,000 ISK. Then I saw a shuttle for 100,000 ISK. I was like, oh. Look at the base speed on this shuttle. This is great. So I bought the shuttle, 100,000 ISK shuttle, and I was like, okay, now how do I mine in this thing? I was like, oh, My tent?
You can't even put anything on it.
This is awful. Like, oh, fuck this game. And I was like, that was my youth career the very first time I played.
That's funny. Yeah. No, there's moments like that too. I still have. I haven't gotten rid of. I'm never going to get rid of it because I still have frigate construction level 4 trained. Because when I first started, I thought you had to build your own ships. So I can remember seeing frigate construction, and I was like, that's probably something I'm going to need because I can only fly frigates, right? So I trained it to level 4. It's like the only I have 2 industrial skills. I have mining foreman 3 and frigate construction 4. Those are my...
That's great. Yeah, one of my first PvP losses, I was in a thorax, and I had linked my mail. It was an atrocious fit. Right. I linked my mail to someone, and they're like, "Why do you have heat sinks on? Heat sinks aren't for."
Right.
Like, oh, it just says it increases damage. I think heat sink sounds way cooler than
mag stabs, right?
Yeah. Right. So heat sink sounds like it does stuff. You know? Right. Like no, it's only for energy weapons. And I was like, oh. But now there's just so much information out there.
It's not.
Player. You can just. It's daunting, but it's not as daunting as it used to be.
No, and you can easily find out these things, that you don't make those mistakes, because I used to do the same thing. I'd put missiles and guns on my cormorant because you never knew what you were going to get into, right? So, yeah. I used to put a cloak on my Drake too, because I thought that was so cool.
Yeah.
So many embarrassing things, from those. But those were fun days, trying to find your way and do things. So, I don't regret any of that stuff because I've had a blast all these years. But so what is it?
Part of those
The what?
I was going to say the best part of those times is everyone was trying to come up with the same solution. So the blind shooting the blind.
We were all idiots back in those days. Yeah, it's funny when I think back. The people I thought at the time were older, more experienced players really hadn't been playing all that long. Now that I've been here almost a decade. When I think back, they'd only been playing for a year and a half, 2 years. Most of them, and they seem like such old vets that knew so much. But
I remember one of the first wars I was involved in when we were fighting Mercenary Coalition and Bandit Brothers. They actually had the skills to use Tech 2 guns and Tech 2 ammo, so they could actually outrange you.
Right.
We really had Tech 1 and meta stuff, so we'd only be able to go for let's say 100 kilometers, but they had the Tech 2 guns.
Right.
So they could shoot at 180 kilometers. You're like, oh, this disparity in skills is so huge. And how could we ever win? It's impossible.
Yep. I had a very similar experience. I was in a Condor. I was doing scouting in Faith Abilis or somewhere, I can't remember, down south. And I was so proud of myself because I had made bookmarks around all the gates and things, around the systems. So I had warped into a bookmark. It was probably 135, it had been over a warp distance, so about 155 kilometers off the gate. And there was a fleet came in, and I think they were Geddons or battleships, and I thought, oh, look at that! There's nothing they could do, right? And then they locked me up and killed me. Sniper battleship just killed me from that distance. It was like, okay, yeah. It's the kind, it's that same thing. I can't wait until I fly a ship like that, right? I'm going to show them. I'm going to show them when I can get into a battleship. I'm really going to be a badass.
Yeah.
I hardly ever fly those things anymore. It's kind of funny now. So what is it?
Now I'm always focusing on frigates and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. So what is it right now anyway? What is the most fun you have? What you're doing in Eve?
So I saw this newer character that I'm tinkering around with and trying to find my way with it. When it's really fun just to to see how other people react and how other people view the game. Because it's very different from how I view the game.
Right.
Say that way.
Right.
And they have all these interesting theories about what's going on in Null Sec politics, and I just have to sit there and snicker and just laugh. My group is in the drone land, so they're not really doing much. But they talk about like what's going on. They talk about all the wars, the anime wars. So they all have like this hilarious misconception about what's going on. They're like, oh, this guy really hates anime, so they started a huge war. There's like thousands of people fighting for anime. How great is that?
So you're
doing that.
Yeah.
And also,
so you're
like small scale PvP as well.
So you're incognito in these. Yeah. They don't.
That's my favorite thing to do. It's not like super malicious spying, but it's
right
fun to do anyway.
That's pretty funny. I've actually been tempted lately. I think I might do that myself here because, well, you've probably had this too, right? So if you show up in local as yourself, there's a certain expectation and things that go along with that, right? Because you've built up this reputation and people know you. And I've been bumping into that, a lot more lately too, I killed a guy the other day and I potted him, and then I get a combo request and he's like, oh man, I love the podcast, keep doing it, don't do that while I'm, or I'll go into a system. I'm trying to sneak around and people are like, hey Rixx, how's it going? I'm like, now I got to fly like 3 jumps away to get away from you people.
Yeah, that does happen a little bit. But I mean, I've kind of been a lower profile in the last couple months, so I kind of slide under the radar. I think there are a few people who have no idea who I am in Eve, which is great.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice.
So that's dope. Hopefully I can shoot them. But some of the most fun I had in recent memory was I was flying around with a player. She had just started PvP, and she was a streamer named Scared Panda.
Oh, sure.
And I was following around with her, and just the amount of people that would like shoot at her is great because she was just like a newer player.
Right.
And they didn't suspect that I'd be flying in the same group because I was in Pandemic Legion and she was basically a new player.
Right.
And so I'd fly around in like her stream fleets and stuff like that with 3 or 4 other people. And the amount of just the sheer number of fights I was getting was incredible.
Wow.
And so that kind of inspired me to make like a few little characters and inject them up a little bit to levels.
Oh, that's awesome. Were you doing that as Elise, or are you doing that as one of your other characters? Or
I was doing that as Elise, but it inspired me to make like other characters to like fly under the radar with as well. To look like a weird noob. Right. You way more fights. Like when I'm fighting, people are like, oh, I'm not going to fight him. He's going to have like a fleet that'll kill me.
Right.
I flew Providence like 2 months ago when we were nowhere nearby. They're like, oh, you've got a sign outfit. I was like, okay, if I do have a sign outfit, what am I going to do? All my supers are in the north. Like, oh, you've got tricks. You're
right.
Sano Blavers. I mean, it's great sometimes when you need to get from A to B and
not be bothered. Right. That's pretty funny. So Toxic Yakin wants to know where his photobomb photo is. I just saw that on Twitter.
I still have to upload all of my pictures from FanFest. I have so many. Some of them I have no idea where they came from, but some of them are fantastic and fun.
That's awesome.
I love going to FanFest. I was like skeptical the very first time I went. I was like,
right.
Go to conventions. I'm not really into this. I kind of like hide the fact from like my real life friends that I play Eve. So I don't know if I have anything in common with these people. Then I get there and it's just one giant good time.
Oh, it's the best thing ever. Yeah, I felt the same way. For years I didn't know anybody in real life that played Eve other than my son, who is the one that got me into the game. But other than that, we'd never met anybody in real life. The first real life Eve player that I met was in Iceland. So anyway, but yeah, FanFest is the best. If you haven't gone, I encourage everyone to at least go once. But yeah, don't you find that too? Like, if you don't go, it kind of feels like there's something missing. Like I should be there. I
went 2 years in a row, and I skipped out. Not this year, but the year before that. I didn't go that year, and I was like, man. I'm like in these WhatsApp groups, and I see all these like pictures and stuff. I'm like, man, I wish I was there. I'm sad.
Yeah, you're missing out on it.
I've always been going to E Vegas, which is a little bit easier for me to get to, and that is also a lot of fun. So if you live in the U.S., I'd highly suggest doing that.
Yeah, we've thought about it. We're it's a little tough with us with the kids and everything to go away twice like that, big trip in a year. So we're not sure. I know we're definitely not going this year, but maybe down the road. But
yeah, that's always hard to justify as well, because ever since I was on the CSM, I was on CSM 6, so a few years ago.
Right.
I've been using all of my vacation time and time off.
Right, to go
to Eve stuff.
Right. Right.
Mostly it's been going to FanFest, because if it wasn't going for the CSM Summit, I was going for the Alliance Tournament stuff, and if I wasn't going for Alliance Tournament, I was going for FanFest. And so ever for the last, like, I don't know, 7 years or so, I've been blowing all of my
on Eve stuff,
all my vacation time on going to Reykjavik.
Well, this year, you know, one of the boys' birthdays was while we were gone, so that was kind of tough too. So, you know, it's always like, well, we're going to have that second trip somewhere. We should probably take the family with us. You know, so that two of them gets kind of tough, but you know, in a year. But we'll see. You never know. I don't have any problem with going. It's just logistically, you know, how much time do you give to this stinking game? It's a lot already, you know. It gets kind of weird. But
Vegas has like a really different tone than FanFest as well. And the cool part is about Vegas is the groups are like so split up. So you've got like the groups that are just all about Eve, right? And they don't do anything outside of like the Eve stuff at all.
Right.
Then you have the people who are there just because it's Vegas and they know people in Eve and they do just all Vegas stuff.
Right.
And you got this like cool little fun mix in the middle, which is like basically the bulk of everyone.
Right.
So you can always find a little clique that you can kind of like
hang out with,
suck up to, and you know maybe they're not part of your alliance, maybe they're part of your enemies, but you still have a really good time.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of my best friends, when coming from this, is for going to Eve meets is Lazarus Tellraven, and he's like part of Goons Forum.
Right.
I'm part of PL, and we're like at war, blah 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 blah.
Right.
It's always fun hanging out with him. He's like one of the best people to hang out with, and I talk to him regularly. And all of that is just because we met at Eve Vegas once. Right.
Yeah. No. You know, and I find that to be true. Well, for me, I can't speak for everyone, but for me personally, there is not a person in real life that I have any issue with at all. You know, and it's when I meet people at FanFest, you know, there's a little bit of, I could see in some faces a little hesitancy or whatever, but you know, once we start talking, if we get a chance to, because it's still amazing, even at FanFest, that you just run out of time. You know, it's like there were people this year that I really wanted to get in touch with or hang out with or have a moment of talking. You just can't find the time to do it to everybody. You just miss people. Like there were definitely people that I wanted to see and talk to, but that I just completely missed. Like I don't know that I even saw them. You know, it's that busy.
It's always really hard too, because it's not like for a lack of desire to meet them. It just
paths just don't. Right. There's only so many hours in a day, and sometimes your paths just don't cross. You know, or they're on their way somewhere. You know, like poor Nash. You know, the entire thing. Every time I saw him, he was running. You know, one place there.
So-and-so to do this.
Do you find? I mean, you were involved in a lot of that. You know, with the TV and everything at FanFest. Do you find that enjoyable, or did you feel like you missed out? Because I know, you know, talking to Nash afterwards, you know, he felt like he kind of, you know, he did a lot, and kudos to him for that. But you know, he did feel like he missed out a little bit on the experience. You know.
I really love doing the Eve TV stuff because it just kind of gave me a new perspective, and then I got to do some really cool things.
Right.
Like I interviewed Christian Yarn and asked and gave him some Game of Thrones spoilers.
Right.
So that wouldn't have happened any other time in my life.
Right.
Was fantastic.
That's pretty cool.
But the only thing I regret about it is the start time was always like at 9:00. They expected you to like kind of be around.
Right. That's tough.
I just never got to the parts where we got to do like the crazy late partying and stuff like that, which I'm too old for anyways. So it was a really nice excuse being like, oh no, I've got ETV to do. Sorry, can't stay until 4.
Got to get up in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's good to have a built-in excuse. Like I just say, I'm freaking tired, guys. I'm going home. Like halfway through the pub crawl, my wife and I look at each other like, this bar smells like a bathroom, and we're not having fun. So let's go. You know, that was
the pub crawl is
it's
really ridiculous.
Freaking brutal.
I'm not sure why they did it that way, but it was quite packed.
Yeah, it was.
It's kind of fun to see a bunch of Eve nerds just take over an actual city.
I know, it's pretty cool. It is cool. It is a great experience. You know, I missed out on it the first FanFest because I was busy with CCPs doing stuff with the posters and all, and we missed out on it. But you know, we decided we were definitely going to do it this time because you kind of have to experience it for yourself, and it is worth doing because it's just a blast. You know, so many so many people, that you don't get to normally talk to, in the context of the game that you can get, really get to know pretty well from just hanging out. It's kind of cool.
From all walks of life as well. So that's always kind of exciting for me, just to see who someone is behind the avatar. So
yeah, I mean, from all over the world. We're very fortunate, I think, in many ways, and beyond the game part of it, just from a community standpoint, and people from all over the place, from all over the world, and that's kind of neat. Meeting people and getting to know them and their families and their stories and things, and it's one of the reasons why I started doing this podcast specifically was to have an opportunity to sit down, even though we don't always get to do, even at FanFest, it's hard to get an hour, to sit down and talk to somebody, but because I just find everyone very fascinating, so it's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, but this game is, not to sound like a crazy platitude stereotype, this great game is really crazy in terms of the community. I think it's definitely what makes the game enjoyable to play for such a long time. I can't see myself playing any other game or MMO like that for so long.
No.
Because the mechanics, I love the mechanics. I love CCP. I love Fozzie and Rise and Larrikin.
Yes.
The mechanics aren't anything super special,
No, not really.
But the game company itself is fantastic. Everyone there is great. And just the community that's built around it is really nice.
No, I think it was very well said. I think that, for me, if it was just the game, I would have quit a long time ago. Like 3 or 4 years of that would have been enough. If it was, and of course the people at CCP are awesome, but that wouldn't convince me to go. The reason why I stay is because of all the friendships and people and the community and things that we've experienced together. It's kind of it's a hard thing to walk away from. I can't even actually imagine walking away from it, to be honest.
Yeah, and that's why I always laugh at all these either dying threads that you see basically every summer.
Right? Yeah. It's pretty much every day on Reddit, right?
Stay around, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think so. I had an interesting conversation, and maybe see what you think, with CCP Logi about this at FanFest, and I don't know. He's got a side project that he's doing, and he interviewed a few of us on camera. And you were there and in that back room. Yeah, that's when I asked you if you wanted to be on the podcast. Yeah, I remember. So, but we were talking about this was off camera, but we were talking about what does it look like if it does? I mean, there's really no reason why I think that EVE can't go on for another 20, 25, 30 years maybe, given, changes in technology or something that might completely make it irrelevant. But, it's theoretically possible for it to just go on for a really long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the current state of EVE is also really healthy in terms of Null Sec. I know for the longest time, it felt like there were a handful of people that were doing almost all of the work in terms of providing content, starting wars, doing campaigns.
We went through a period like that.
Handful of people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then it sort of. The cause of that is there's no one else, like when those guys moved on, there's no one else to pick up that mantle.
Right.
But now I think we have a lot of people that can provide content. It's not just the same 5 big names. There's dozens and dozens of big FCs. There's dozens of alliance leaders. There's guys that make their own coalitions and do stuff. They can do it in low sec, high sec.
Right. And don't you think also too that the types of content have expanded beyond where they were before? Like when you said those days, that was pretty much the only drivers of content at the time period was Null Sec wars, really. But now there seems to be a more the types of content have spread out. You've got your wormholes and those guys doing their things and dropping out at any given moment and disrupting your thing. Then you've got the whole streamer class who are driving content because of entertainment value, right, and trying to do that, which is always something that's exploitable as well as from their side and our side, because we always pick up whenever a streamer goes through local or we get them on our intel because we know that they're going to want to fight, so we just chase them. So
they usually don't care about it.
right. So that's kind of a fun kind of content. Every once in a while, it spices things up, and there's all kinds of there's more to it. I think there's a lot more opportunities for content now than there used to be. So people can get engaged in multiple ways, you know.
Exactly. There's like everything is more diverse. Not only the people that are controlling things, but don't get me wrong. Like back when there was a handful of people doing everything, those were fun days. Like,
those were
some of the most fun I've ever had.
Right.
In Eve.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Like when they left, there was like a huge dearth of stuff to do.
Right.
Like people to pick up after them.
Right.
I remember when Shadu left, there was a huge void to be filled, and I still think it hasn't really been filled. And when Mr. V left and Mactep left, kind of and came back a little bit, but when all those people left around the same time, it just felt
like a vacuum,
so boring and stale, and just like nothing cool could ever happen again. You know?
Right. It always does. When well, you've probably lived through this too. It's that moment where there's 3 or 4. It sort of seems to add up over a certain period of time where, you know, one friend will quit and you don't hear from them for a long time. And then a couple other people will quit. I know I've gone through we're about 4 or 5 years into Stay Frosty now. And I've gone through about 3 or 4 different phases of this where you start to get to know people and then a few of them will quit and not come back, you know, and that you got to start all over again with a new group, you know, in a way, because it just feels like a kick in the ass, really. You know, it's like, oh man, I really enjoyed flying with those guys, and now they're not around anymore. It's always weird.
And that's why it's so important to just always keep on finding the next thing to do, because you never know what player is going to leave or what game mechanic is going to change and stuff like that.
Right.
And that's how a lot of like alliances and story groups have kind of died out. It's just because it just dwindled to the people that are running it. And eventually those guys get so overburdened, they're like, I can't do this anymore. It's not fun. I need a break. And they eventually come back, but, you know, they don't always come back with the same group that they had before.
Right. Yeah. No, it's true.
And that's one of my favorite things about alphas, too, is when that mechanic, the sort of free-to-play mechanic came back. And it's something that I've been really passionate about for the longest time is, you know, a free-to-play option for EVE. Is I have on my Steam friends list probably 140 people who I used to play EVE with and other games. And they always hit me up like, oh, how's EVE going? What's going on in EVE? Are you still playing? I'm like, yeah, it's fine. You should check it out. They're like, yeah, I don't want to spend $20 for just like a weekend of playing.
Right.
But now I tell them that it's free, and they're like, oh shit, this is great. And they play for a weekend, and you know, maybe 10% of it like sub for a month just to, you know, get their kicks out of it. Some of them stay for much longer, but it's nice as like a way to get people who have played the game to get back into it, because so much has changed. It's basically a new game.
It really is.
Lots of levels.
Yeah, it really is. Especially if you've been gone for a year or two. You know, it's changed a lot. I agree. I think Alpha States is a perfect way to do it. I've had a lot of success talking to people about the game lately, and that when I say success, I mean I've always talked to people about the game because I'm a big believer in it. You know, and it's a great game and a great community. But lately, because of being able to say, well, you should just try it. It's free, right? And that's that barrier where it's like, well, shit, why not? I'll just download that sucker this weekend and give it a shot. You know.
So I think the only thing holding EVE back, and I'm not sure how to fix it, is the people who just want to log in for 30 minutes to go do something in EVE, and without like getting sucked in for 2 or 3 hours,
right,
or even longer. Because like, sometimes, and I mean, I'm guilty of this too. Sometimes it's like late on a Friday, I get home, I'm like, oh, should I roam into EVE for an hour and maybe get some kills? Or can I just play one game of Dota or something? And you know,
it's tough, yeah. Well, especially as your life gets more complicated, you know, and you have children or jobs, or you're traveling or whatever. It gets very difficult to. And I mean, you know, I don't know about you, but for me, I've learned when to pull back and when to take, you know, mini breaks, or heck, the whole month of January I didn't play really. I mean, I'm still involved with things. I'm still on, you know, running the Alliance and doing that. But as far as logging on, I didn't really do that much. You know, it's kind of just take a mental break for a short period of time because I don't want to get burned out on it. You know.
Yeah, EVE is a game.
It could suck you in.
Worse. It's very easy to get burned out on when you get sucked in.
Yeah.
It's so hard to play at such a high level for an extended period of time.
It really is.
EVE is a game where you want to play at a high level every single time because you get so many benefits from it. Like,
yes.
You can see there's like tactile rewards for like getting more and more involved.
Yeah, it's
the type of people that like play EVE, right? They'll have that same sort of weird personality where they want to be the best at something. They want to like
exactly.
get to they want to like climb Everest, but they don't want to actually do the work.
Yeah, there's really no way to casually actually play because you have to be on your toe, otherwise you just get killed, right? So you have to when you undock, you've got to be on your A game, and there are times when I'm not, and I know it, and I get killed or I do something stupid, and I'm like, this is just not the day for me because, my head's in my ass or I had a bad day at work or whatever. But, it's just I better dock up and just go home and log out because it's not going to go well.
It's one of those moments.
You can't work your way out of it.
I was roaming around Low Sec in my factional for Low Sec in my little Dramiel, and I was getting some kills. And I went on just a historic tear. In like half an hour, I got like 30 kills. Just everywhere was a
nice.
fight, and I was just getting drags left and right, and I felt great. I was like, this is what Eve's all about.
Right.
Then on my way back, I was like, I should probably not fight. I'm just gonna go home. And I was like, but there's one more thing. Let me just go get this one last thing.
Yeah.
Of course, it was horrible bait, but I knew I had to try it because I had such good luck. I was like, there's no way this is going to be bait. I've had so much good luck. I'm on a streak. And I died. I was like so frustrated. I didn't play for like 4 days after just because I was super frustrated.
I can't tell you how many times I do that. The other one that gets me too is, I've been playing for 3 hours and nothing's happened. And then I'm like, well, it's just a slow day in Eve, so I'm going to go dock up. And then there's that last thing. And you're like, it never goes well. It's always bad. Yeah.
Always doom.
It's always doom. Yeah.
But I mean, that's part of the, as twisted as it sounds, that's sort of part of the allure of Eve, because you never know when you're going to get like the good day or the bad day, what's going to happen. So every fight you're like, this was special because I don't know I'm going to get this again. And this feeling, especially in PvP for people that haven't tried it, like this is the thing I try to impress upon everyone who plays Eve is always just try PvP because it's like such a rush. Even if you don't think you're the type of person that would like it, it's such a rush you have to try it.
There's nothing else quite like it. I don't think I've ever experienced anything in any other game I've ever played that's been as satisfying, win or lose, really, as if you've had a good fight. When you know it when you have it, whether you lose or win, really, it's about that just felt really great, and
we live in this little bit of a bubble as well because we are part of the PvPers in EVE Online and stuff like that.
Right.
There are so many people in high sec that will just never leave because they're like, no, PvP is not for me.
I know. They don't
know what they're missing, but you can't really push them out any further because maybe they did get ganked or something when they're in their barge in high sec. They're like, I didn't like that.
Right, and nobody does. But yes, it's not really what we're talking about, right? It's just part of the fun.
That's why I love groups like Horde and Karma Fleet and even Brave, because they get these new players, and before they get that aversion to dying,
right,
you just throw them out.
Right. It's just
relentlessly, and they remove the stigma because EVE Online for the longest time had this stigma of dying, right?
Right.
And still does to some extent.
Yeah, it did. The stakes were different, and I think it's a lot easier now, at least for our standpoint, when new players come into to the pirate corporations. We're telling them the same thing: just get out there and die as often as possible. And at some point, between us telling you what to do and showing you how to fit ships and flying with us and watching us do it, and at some point you become really good at it. And it happens to everybody. It's just a matter of time. You can't predict when that's going to happen, though. And I get this question all the time. Will this ship kill this ship? And I'm like, I don't know. Go do it. Find out. Because I don't know. These days especially, it is so hard to tell. The other night we had one of our guys in a Tristan, I think it was, kill the Dominics. And I think there were 2 frigates that actually killed the Dominics. But, that was the question. Can these 2 ships kill the Dominics? And I'm like, I don't know. Go find out, because you would not believe the fit on this thing. It was so horrible. Nobody in their right mind would fit a Dominics this way. But you just don't know until you try, right? Because,
Because everyone out there, you don't know how good or how bad they're going to be. Like, that's one of my pet peeves in people who become like a little bit good at Eve, and they think they know a little bit too much. Like, oh, I can take this fight because this ship will beat me like 80% of the time or 90% of the time.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, no, on paper it will, but everyone's awful. Like, you can go and win if you're better.
Well, exactly. And but the thing that annoys me about that kind of talk is, and this is what I try to teach our guys, is that's a face-to-face fight. There's a lot more to fighting than just orbiting each other or keeping range. There's strategy, there's tactics, there's position in space. There's a lot of things that go into it that a lot of people don't appreciate. You don't always have to take the first fight, but draw that guy out. Get him off a gate, get him off a planet, do whatever it takes. Make him chase you a little bit until you have the higher ground, right? And that's the fun part about it. That's the strategy part. That's not just activate this and activate that and then kill, and bash each other in the face. I mean, of course, that's a big part of it, but there's a lot of tactics that go into fighting that aren't about what you think they are about. And there's a mental game too, a mental game in local. There's a lot of positioning and things that can go on, that do affect the outcome of a fight, So, making the other guy make a mistake, make him be the one that makes the mistake, and then you take advantage, and you got to be ready to take advantage of it when it happens. So there's a lot to that.
Online is played by a bunch of mistake machines.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why you play. That's why I got drawn to FCing in the first place, is because knowing that my action was unpredictable and it forced someone to make a mistake.
Right.
It gave me such a huge rush on like a huge level.
Yep.
Because I get that when I'm solo PvPing as well, but when you do it on like a bigger scale,
yes,
you feel so smug, and that's why I'm probably always known for being smug.
Right.
Is because you just get so smug after
smug
that.
life. Right.
You're like, this is the best. Like, I just made you do something dumb like that you didn't want to do, but I tricked you into doing it.
Yeah. No, it's the best feeling. It's the best feeling, isn't it? I mean, yeah, it is. When I've outsmarted, outlasted, and outplayed, it's that, there's nothing else quite like that. And it's a comfort knowing that there was a human being on the other side who's like I always imagine them pounding their fist on the desk, like, how did he do it? That kind of thing. I'm sure it's not that's not what's going on.
That's like why I got into spying in the first place when I was like starting out and getting involved in like Null Sec stuff.
Right.
Is I just wanted to see what the other guy's reaction was, and that was my entire motivation. It wasn't so I can get an advantage.
Right.
Obviously, that's fantastic.
Right.
But the huge thing about it was I wanted to see what the other guy's reaction is. Like, I wanted to see how mad they got, or how happy they got, or how confused they got.
Right. That's pretty funny. Yeah, I'd love to hear that. I've been on done a couple of things like that in the past too, where I had people setting in other people's comms, and I could hear them talking while we were fighting. It was kind of fun. That's always fun to do, but I don't bother with that stuff as much as I used to. But yeah. So anyway, hey, Elise, I really appreciate you being on and hanging out with us and hanging out with us. I used the royal us. I don't know who else is here. It's just me. So hanging out with me. Slip of the tongue.
It was a pleasure. I really love the podcast, and as you can tell, like once I get going about Eve, I won't shut up.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story about that, because earlier today, you had a little bit of weather problems and you were a little late. But so my wife asked, "What are you going to talk about tonight?" I said, "Well, I have a feeling that I'll just say a few words, and then the rest of it'll just be Elise talking." So that worked out really well. Yeah. So that's great. I appreciate it. And thanks for coming out. Do you have any last words or any shout outs or anything you want to say before we go?
No, I mean, just shout out to guys who are going to be participating in the Alliance Hornet coming up in a few months. It's my favorite little part of Eve, and I'm really excited to see the craziness that ensues. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to winning this year. It's going to be great. I have no expectation of actually doing that, but I would really like that. That would be a nice thing to have happen. This is like, the last sort of big thing that I would like to accomplish in Eve. So we're going to give it a shot again, but we'll see how it goes. At least I don't have to worry about the auction this year. We're automatic in, so we don't have to worry about getting a spot. So that's nice.
Yeah, that's really nice. That's nice. Anything can really happen in this format. So it's always fun to see. Yeah. Like the underdog make it through so far. Every year there seems to be one or two little underdogs that come from all over the place, and just. Yeah,
it keeps things interesting, So hopefully we'll have exactly. All right, man. Hey, take care and fly safe, and we'll talk again at some point. Take care.
Yep.
All right.
Take care. Thanks a lot.